I'm very thankful for all of the elders. I'm having a lot of fun serving today with Mike. And I'm glad he told you to close your eyes during the prayer, because now we don't need any nap time in the sermon. We've got nap time out of the way. We just had a little side conversation going on. I mean, small things like hockey and, like Maurice Rocket Richard. And then there was an upstart kid, Wayne Gretzky. And he tried to throw in Gordie Howe, and I'm just like, okay, we're out. But this idea, what is the greatest? And how do we live in the greatest? And how can we, Vienna, be the greatest? I don't know how many of you were alive. I think most of you, but not all of you. Some of you weren't. And 9/11. I will never forget the day. My brother calls me from Canada, and I'm not even paying attention to the news, and my brother is like, "You've got to get out of America. America is under attack." And I'm like, my younger brother, right? Like, he's Canadian, I'm Canadian, he's in Canada, I'm here. I'm like, are you crazy? Like, I know you don't want me living down here, but... And he's like, turn on the TV. And it seemed like for a moment that the world was coming to an end. It seemed like at a moment that I could not comprehend where America was going next. And as an Adventist, I was living in North Carolina, church planting at the time, and I remember a family was getting together because there was a big evangelism council about to happen right before 9/11 down in Atlanta, and Mark Finley was going to be the keynote speaker, and then boom, this happened, and then it's like, do we cancel? Of course we cancel, but then we're like, don't cancel. This is the time we need to hear about Jesus. And I remember hearing stories about Mark Finley driving down by car because there were no planes. And I remember that evening, this is back in the days when we all had those satellites out on our yard to be able to watch Adventist programming. Sitting around a little TV with another couple Adventist families, wondering if the world was going to end. And what would Mark Finley, the elder statesman of Adventism, tell us all? And he said something that I have not been able to forget ever since. He said, some of you want to know this week if this means Jesus is coming. You know, Mark. But for most of you out there, Jesus is your next heartbeat. And his coming is as close as your next heartbeat. What was he saying? He was saying that nothing else matters than that you keep moving forward with God, in your rhythm with God, or else what? What do we call it? When your heart stops beating. It's as serious as a heart attack. And our hearts stop beating for many reasons, but sometimes hearts stop beating because they're out of sync with Jesus. And so I want to talk about this idea. My sermon is called A New Heartbeat. heartbeat, but it's actually just introducing the idea we're going to talk about for the year. And the idea we're going to talk about for the year, I mentioned in the welcome. And our theme for the whole year is beating with the heartbeat of Jesus. Can we get this together? Beating with the heartbeat of Jesus. We're going to say it together. We're going to break it down because there's too many syllables. All right, we got the beating with, the heartbeat of Jesus. Beating with, the heartbeat of Jesus. We are Vienna. Hey, I think we might have it. We're going to do it one more time. I'm really excited now. Because this is going to fit my sermon so nicely. Thank you, guys. We are Vienna, beating with. We are Vienna, beating with the heartbeat of Jesus. And we really are, and that's what I want to talk about. How can we stop having spiritual heart attacks? How can we stop being out of sync with the rhythm of God? And New Year's Eve was amazing, even though I got sick after New Year's Eve, but I'm good now. But New Year's Eve was amazing. We had 80 people come out to start the year off together. And Matt James, I love this guy. Some of you were around when Matt was here. I understand he was an elder, just a great guy. He was talking about his retirement and that this was the church he retired from. He was a teacher and a local elder here. And he retired from here. And for me, it's like, since I've been here, New Year's is like my time to see Matt James. He always comes out at New Year's and he always, does this nice little devotional and it's always great. And it clicked in my head something, though. He talked about his retirement and that he keeps going to churches to preach and he keeps getting called to places to go even though he's in retirement. And I remembered, and I mentioned it to him that night, I remembered when I was starting ministry, when I was down at Southern Adventist University and I was starting ministry, my professor, Dr. Doug Tilstra, was holding an intro to ministry class. And by the way, if any of you ever take an intro to ministry class, let me just tell you, those classes are designed to decide if you're pastor material or not. And so that's really what Doug's job was. But he said this to the whole class. I'll never forget it. He said, a lot of pastors are going to want to go out there and get big churches right away. He's like, a lot of pastors are going to want to go out there and they're going to want to preach their best sermon right away. He's like, a lot of pastors are going to go out there and they're going to try to be perfect right away. And then he said, I want you to always remember, nobody remembers how you started, but everyone will remember how you finish. Don't worry about where you start. Worry about where you finish. And why do I say that? I say that because we are all so hung up. It's, what are we going to talk about on the first Sabbath back of the new year? Oh, it's the new year. I can't mess up my diet now because this is the time I'm going to get serious. Or, this is the time I'm going to make Listen. It doesn't matter how 2025 starts. It matters how you finish it. Don't get hung up on the mistakes you make. Don't get hung up on the scrapes on your knee. Don't think you've blown everything because you blew it on day 2. Nobody will remember how it started. They all start the same way, the ball drops. But it matters how they end. So this year we're talking about beating with the heartbeat of Jesus. We're talking about how do we get our hearts in sync with his rhythm. And so, like I said, it doesn't matter how you start, it matters how you finish. And I just got to say, y'all finished amazing in 2024. No, like amazing. Don't worry about how you start 225 if you're very silent. Well, at the end, you were amazing in 2024, at the end. We had Christmas every week, and I mean, we even had sweaters. I mean, no, like seriously, nobody does, like this is now the word, right? Nobody does Christmas like Vienna. From our Christmas story program to the school's amazing program. I mean, and didn't they have the most adorable angels you ever saw? And then if 2 Christmas programs were not enough for you guys, then you went serving people. You not only preached about and listened about and taught about incarnation, you went and did it. A group of you went out to Ronald McDonald House. Has that ever happened here before? Have we ever taken someone to Ronald McDonald House before? And prepared meals for parents with sick children. A group of you just went from door to door singing Christmas carols and spreading good news and meeting, and the neighbors, they were like so happy just to go out and be with you and take their pictures with you. Some of you made cards for veterans, and then some of you set up a hypothermia shelter here in this church. And many of you came day after day, sometimes as early as 4 a.m, sometimes as late as 10 at night, some of you on both shifts. And you served with love. People in need. And I know this for sure, because I asked and I checked. Vienna Seventh-day Adventist Church has never opened their doors to the homeless before. Not in 104 years, soon to be 5. But you finished strong. And then we had Harrison Burr come up, give us a cantata, just as the cherry on top. Boom. And so I wanted to preach this sermon about we got to get our hearts in sync with Jesus. You all wrecked that for me. I wanted to preach a sermon about, hey, let's like I could use like the ADD, what are those called? Those things where you start someone's heart. I could have used that as a, yeah, that thing she's talking about. I could have used that. I could have said, like, we're just going to do that. We're going to boom, boom, you bet. Right? Defibrillators? Aren't there things that keep your fridge warm? I don't know. But you've seen that when they just shock the rhythm back in. But I can't. You wrecked my sermon. Because you finished 2024 in sync with Jesus. Come on. You finished 2024 in sync with Jesus. In fact, you finished 2024 more in sync with Jesus than I can find evidence of this church ever being in sync with Jesus. You finished 2024 with a Matthew 25 ending. You went out and cared for the least of these. And what I mean by you ruined my sermon is I can't tell you have to get your heart in sync with Jesus. I can't preach that sermon. That's what I had planned to preach. I can't preach that sermon. Because your hearts are in sync with Jesus. And I know your hearts are in sync with Jesus because your behaviors are in sync with Jesus. And so I say, we need to stay in sync with how we ended last year. 2025 stands on the shoulders of 2024. And not on every day of 2024, but on how we ended. And so all I can say to you is we will beat with the heartbeat of Jesus. And it's already in play. And that's kind of the point in Jeremiah 31. It's kind of the point in Jeremiah 31. I like that Mike brought up the Ezekiel 28 verse. They are tied together. In Jeremiah's version, God has already given them a good heart. You know, it's kind of like Vienna in some ways. That's why maybe we picked this verse, right? Like you already have the good heart. But in Jeremiah 31, what he is saying is, yeah, you've got a good heart. You've been redeemed from slavery. We'll see that. You've been redeemed from sin. We'll see that. You've been set free from your struggles. You've been put into sync with God. But are you keeping in rhythm with God? And it seems to me, throughout the Bible, God says, I want to be your God. And I want you to be my people. And we find that same idea here in Jeremiah 31. He says this, he says, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a what kind of covenant? I will make a new covenant with who? The people of Israel and with the people of Judah. Is it the same covenant? There might be a clue. It's 3 letters. It's a new covenant, right? The time will come, the day will come, where it's time for a new covenant, or as I'm calling it in this sermon, a new heartbeat. Right? Because your heart beats boom, boom, boom. We all need the next beat, right? If it's in sync or out sync, we need the next beat. The day is coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with my people of Israel and with the people of Judea. It will not be like what? The covenant I made with their ancestors. Here's what I want to say. God is doing something new. God is doing something new this year in 2025. Is it the return of Jesus? Maybe. Someone's over here saying they hope so. I hope they plan to go evangelize my family in Canada first. Right. That's the point, isn't it? We're going there. If we're in sync with Jesus, if we're in sync with his new way, if we're in sync with his new covenant, then we want to change the world. It will not be like the covenant I made with their ancestors when I took them by the what? The hand. And led them out of where? Egypt. These are not accidental words. He is not talking to a group of enslaved people. He is not talking to a group of people who don't know the rhythm of Yahweh. He is not talking to a group of people who have not already been set free. Have they been set free already? Absolutely. How can I say that? Read the text. The day will come, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with Israel and Judea, and it will not be like the old covenant of their ancestors when I took them by the what? It's a loving picture. Whenever you hear someone taking someone by the hand, maybe you see a father helping a child. Maybe you see a husband helping his bride. Maybe you see a young person helping an elderly person. Well, what do you see? You see the strong leading someone feeble. In the old covenant, I took you by the hand. And I led you out of Egypt. Why? Because some of you didn't want to come out. Oh, we say we want out. But I am thankful that God takes us by the hand and says, this way, son. Because they broke, oh boy, they broke my covenant. Though I was their husband to them, declared the Lord. Was there anything wrong with the first covenant? Absolutely not. Is the first covenant bad? Absolutely not. Do we still want the first covenant? Absolutely. What was the problem with the first covenant? Well, the problem with the first covenant, I mean, wait, who wrote the first covenant? Someone wrote it with their finger. God. That wasn't the problem with the first covenant. Wasn't the first covenant. The problem with the first covenant is they had to be led. Someone had to go into Egypt, grab their hand, and pull them to come out. And even then, they started building golden calves immediately, and said, "Hey, give us some leeks and onions and quail." And so he's like, "I have to take you by the hand. I have to lead you. Come this way, young. Come this." But then he says this. This is the covenant. I will make with my people Israel after that time, declares the Lord. After what time? After you already know him. After you already love him, and after he's already redeemed you from Egypt. He wants you to be deeper than led by the hand. It's for some people it will be enough to not be under the Pharaoh's watch. For some people it will be enough to not have the Pharaoh rule over them. For some people it will be enough to just be led to a safe spot. But for God, he says, I want more for you. I'm not going to put the law in your hand and pull you over to Sinai from Egypt. I'm not going to put my way in your path. I'm not going to lure you and push you and pull you. I just have this picture of now not helping a feeble elderly person by the hand get down from the stage, or not helping a child jump over a puddle, but a parent just yanking their kid, get over here before you fall in that water. I don't want to pull you to safety so you don't jump in the mud puddle. I want to put it in your mind and put it in your heart. There's a world that needs saving and loving and caring and support. There's a world that needs hypothermia shelters. We had the best little sandwich team. They made sandwiches for these lunches every day. Sometimes the world needs a sandwich. I will put the law in their minds. I will write it on their hearts. I'm not going to keep pulling you, Vienna. I'm not going to keep pushing you, Vienna. I'm not going to keep coming down, taking you by the hand, shooing away the golden calf, and saying, come on this way. No. I'm going to put it in your head. I'm going to put it in your heart. You're not going to not jump in the mud puddle because I yanked you to the other side, but because you're carrying someone else over it. He says, I will be their God, and they will be my people. Do you know that there are many people in the church, there are many people in Christendom, they've been forgiven, they've been baptized, they've given their hearts, and they come to church pretty regularly. I mean, the average person in North America comes to church once a month. That's of the devoted, according to Pew Research. So if you're making it more than that, praise the Lord. But you're still being taken by the hand. He wants to put it in your mind. He wants to put it in your heart. He doesn't want to be your weekend schedule. He doesn't want to be your Saturday 11 o'clock. He wants to be your every thought. He wants to be your every heartbeat. He wants you to be more than a Christian. He wants you to be more than a Seventh-day Adventist Christian. He wants you to be his people, beating with the heartbeat of Jesus. Naturally thinking, caring, and loving. And when you do that, you are declaring that he is your God. And I meant what I said. Which one of you will go evangelize my family? I mean, outside of Tina and Jose, we're the only Adventists. Which one of you will go? I guess some relatives got out of jail recently, and anyone want to connect with them for me? Or wait, I should be doing that? Right. When we're led by the hand, we just do what we have to do because he's pulling us across the mud puddle. When he's in our minds and he's in our hearts, and our hearts beat in sync with him, and they do, we're already doing that, then it becomes more and more natural to care about those who don't have the heartbeat of Jesus yet. Because look what this verse goes on to say would happen if you would give Jesus your heart. Look what this verse goes on to say would happen for the world if you would give Jesus your mind. This verse actually says what would be the result if Vienna Seventh-day Adventist Church continues. I can't say starts beating with the heartbeat because you're already beating with the heartbeat of Jesus. You've proven that in December. But this next verse tells us what would happen if you keep beating with the heartbeat of Jesus. This will be our normal response. No longer will they have to teach their neighbors or say to one another, "Know the Lord." Why? Oh, great. Pastor's preaching a sermon. It's going to stop all evangelism. Oh, great. No. No longer will they say, teach their neighbor, or say to one another, know the Lord. Because they will, what's the next word? All know me. From the least of them to the greatest. Declares the Lord. I will forever forgive their wickedness and will remember their sins no more. You see, we can be led by the hand. We can be pushed to Sinai. We can be pulled to Sinai. Paul calls it the school teacher, the schoolmaster, right? Goes behind with the whip and boom, make sure they get there on time. And, There's all a purpose for that and a place for that. Yeah, okay, discipline matters, right? But isn't it better? Who's a parent here? Isn't it better when you don't have to hit the whip? Well, the kids aren't saying that. I did hear some amens from the parents. But isn't it the greatest moment for you? Parents and grandparents, when you are shocked and surprised To catch your children doing the right thing at the right time? That's the new covenant. That's beating with the heartbeat of Jesus. And that's what Jesus caught you doing. At the end of 2024. Because sometimes you don't get the credit for what you're doing. But you're not in it for credit. You're in it because it's in your mind. And you're in it because it's in your heart. And you're in it because he forgives all your wickedness and remembers your sin no more. And the whole world would know him. And we wouldn't have to worry about who needs sandwiches tonight. In fact, it's a wonderful thing for Jesus to catch us doing right. It's a wonderful thing for Jesus to catch us doing right. And it's a wonderful thing that he caught us being in sync with him. And now we can stay in sync. Because you won't always get credit or be seen for being in sync with Jesus. When my parents divorced as a child and my mom moved away with 3 children, we lived in various situations, various tribulations. And even once in the basement of an uncle. Now, the problem was that, and I got to be careful because things are recorded these days, so we're living in his basement. Because my mom is a single mom now with 3 kids. And I'm a troublemaker. And I got loud music in somebody else's basement. That's why I'm wearing hearing aids now, folks. Listen to your parents. I didn't. This is your warning. And I don't want to do my homework. And I don't like rules. I'm not really fond of rules. But my uncle's got 2 kids upstairs, 2 boys upstairs that are just a year younger than me. And he becomes convinced that every time they don't do their homework, it's because of my example. He becomes convinced that they're listening to an increasing amount of rock and roll. He becomes convinced that since I've moved in, he hasn't seen them crack a book. And one day, he orders us all to go out and to carry firewood in. And he comes all the way down to the basement. He's like, listen, young man. You know, the sort of leading them from Egypt by the hand kind of speech. I'm going to redeem you if you like it or not, young man. I'm going to take you by the hand and bring you to Sinai. And it was a cold day like this in Canada. And the three of you troublemaking kids are going to go out there and carry in firewood. And don't you think, Vince, just because I'm not your parent, that you're not going to do, that you're going to get away with not doing what I tell you? I'd never not did anything he told me because he never told me anything. So I went out and started moving firewood. His kids didn't. But I live downstairs and they live upstairs. We sit at different dinner tables. So later that night, he comes down to find out why I didn't move any firewood and his kids had to do it all. Listen, Vienna. It's a wonderful thing that Jesus caught you doing good this year or last year. But even when you're not caught doing good, you're not doing it for the recognition. You're doing it because God put a covenant in your mind. And God put a covenant in your heart. And Uncle Kenny came to me one day at a wedding, just a family wedding. And he said, hadn't talked to him since the year I lived in his basement. I only lived in his basement 1 year, I'm glad of that. Hadn't talked to him since that year. He walks up to me at a family wedding. Same tone, same. Yeah. Did I say Kenny? It's Keith, Uncle Keith. I got Kenny and Keith, this is Keith. Same tone, he says, young man, I need to have a word with you. I'm like, oh, here we go. We're going back to Sinai. And he pulls me aside. He says, I got to get something straight with you. You remember living in my basement? Oh my God, I never forget it. He's like, I found the Lord. And ever since I found the Lord, He's been making me watch you. And I need you to know, my heart was not in rhythm with you. I need you to know, it was my heart that was wrong, not yours. And now that, just think about the maturity of this uncle. And now that I know Jesus, and I know you know Jesus, now we beat our hearts together. And Uncle Keith died very shortly after that conversation from a sudden, unexpected heart attack. But I tell you what, in my books, Uncle Keith finished strong. Everything ends. Everything begins. No one remembers the beginning. In fact, read any biography. There's variations on everyone's beginning. But everyone knows how their story ended. And I know how Keith's story ended. And it's not the fact that stories end. It's the fact that my heart and his heart eventually came into rhythm together. Not because my heart synced with his heart, and not because his heart synced with my heart. Heaven forbid. But because both our hearts synced with Jesus. The time is coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with Vienna. Not like the first covenant I made with Vienna. Yeah. It would be like me not to have the spell thing on. All right. The time is coming when I make a new covenant. Not like the old covenant. Not when I take you by the hand and force you to do the right thing. But when I catch the right thing being in your mind and in your heart. Because I am your God. And you are my people. We are Vienna, beating with the heartbeat of Jesus. We are not going to start beating with the heartbeat of Jesus. No, no, no. This is present tense. We are Vienna, beating with the heartbeat